Tiger tattoos are seriously popular, really popular. If you think it resume, tiger are right up there with the dragon and koi, total classics. But it's not just tattoos, folding screen, decorations, even art or royal coat and daimyo road collected. Tiger are everywhere. Honestly, it might be one of the most beloved animal in all of Japanese traditional art. But here's a boom I'm about to drop on you. Tiger have never once existed in Japan. Not now, not ever, historically. Wild tiger, zero. So that's weird. An animal that never even existed there. And people loved it this much. Painted it. Tattooed it on their skin. What were they even looking at? Aren't you curious? Konnichiwa. Yoshi desu. Today's episode is why you should get this tattoo, told the ukiyo-e. And today we're doing tiger. Japanese tattooing started with ukiyo-e. And today's piece is this one. Sato Masakyo hunting a tiger. A tiger roaring in front of a spear. Looks pretty badass, right? But look closer, something's off about the eyes. The pupils are slit, vertical, like a cat. That's not an accident. I'm gonna unpack this piece by piece. Stick around, and by the end, you will get why the tiger we tattooed today is really an animal. It's a story. The tiger didn't alive in Japan as an animal. It arrived as an idea from China. Ever heard about the four guardian deities? Four sacred animals guarding north, south, east, and west. And the one guarding the west is the white tiger. There's also this idea called the dragon and tiger. If dragon controls water, the tiger controls wind. Together, they symbolize cosmic balance. Add in the whole wording of everything. And the tiger was already massively sacred before it even reached Japan. But here's the problem. Painters had to paint this thing with zero real-life reference. They only had the description and other paintings to go on. So what did they do? They found the closest substitute they could. Wanna guess what it was? A house cat. I'm that serious. There are actual records of painters back then sketching their own cat or their patron's cats. And that's exactly what those weird eyes from earlier were. Real tigers have a round pupils, but house cats have those slit, vertical pupils. So painters working off cats accidentally gave tigers cat eyes. Biologically, it's completely wrong. But for centuries, that was just a standard. Okay, let's dig deeper into those spots I mentioned. There are ukiyo-e prints that are very obviously leopards. Not stripes, the whole body covers in round spots. But you know what these titles say? Tiger, not leopard. Did they genuinely believe it was a tiger? Or did they know and correlate that anyway? But here's where it gets even creepier. Leopard is not existed in Japan, same as tiger. But leopard actually did show up. Here's when and how. 1860, late at the period, an actual 8 months old leopard came into Yokohama on a Dutch trading ship. And from late July that year, it went on public display in this big entertainment district in Edo. Think circus or traveling zoo. And this isn't a rumor, it's in the actual historical record. A chronicle from the time literally says crowds flocked to see it. There's even samurai's diary that says pay a little extra and they are tossed a live chicken in the cage so you could watch it get eaten. Basically, this was show business, Edo style. But from start to finish, what did they call it? Tiger? The ad flyers, every print artist made of a thing, every single one. One artist even titled his painting The True Form of the Tiger. even though the animal in the painting is very clearly a leopard. And they still couldn't shake it, the tiger idea. Why? Here's the answer. Back then, people genuinely believed their leopards were female tigers. Like, actually believed it. And this isn't just oops. They mixed up leopard and tigers. There's something way more interesting going on. In their minds, leopard was never its one species to begin with. The whole category of leopard was defined as the female version of a tiger. So the crowds at the exhibit weren't fooled out of ignorance by their own admittedly wrong biology. They were being perfectly logical. Their logic was, this is leopard, which means it's a female tiger, which means calling it a tiger exhibition checkout. And comparing this to the West is genuinely fascinating. The English word leopard comes from the exact same kind of mix-up. It's really leo, lion, pard, panther. The ancient Romans believed a leopard wasn't its own animal, born from a lioness and a panther. East Asia called it a female tiger. The West called it a lion-panther hybrid. Different continents, the exact same logic, literally identical. And here's the detail that will blow your mind even more. Some ukiyo-e print actually showed stripe and spot in the exact same picture. That's not artists messing up. It's an exact visualization of the era's belief that the pattern changes based on a sex and age. To us, it looks like two different animals mixed into one picture. To them, it was just a family.
Like, subscribe.
So did this weird tiger leopard spots, cat eyes, and or just stay the paintings? No. It moved on to skin, but once it's on your skin, things shift a little. What was a sacred symbol in a painting becomes something way more personal the second it's tattooed. In Irajmi, the tiger stands for three big things: courage, and warding off evil, protection from sickness, disasters, bad energy. The tiger is the dragon's counterparts. Dragon rules water, tiger rules wind. So when you tattoo a dragon and tiger together, you are basically ink the balance of the whole world onto your body. But here's what you're probably actually wondering. Forget the old stuff. Why right now, today, are both Japanese people and Westerners still getting this so much? Here's a genuinely wild fact. Out of 4 guardian deities, only the white tiger is a real animal. The dragon and the phoenix are pure fantasy. The black tortoise is a turtle and a snake mashed together. But the white tiger, nothing added, nothing invented. And this animal weighs closer to 300 kilograms, the biggest cat species there is, an apex predator. It was already so overwhelming, nobody even needed to make anything up. And Japan wasn't the only obsessed with that kind of raw presence. Korea, China, same thing. All of East Asia bowed down to this one real existing force. And that feeling still exists the same today. So what did early Irajimi designers actually have a work from? A real tiger? No. These ukiyo-e prints were the only reference they had. Which means tattoo artists naturally ended up inking the exact same eyes, the exact same patterns on skin. And this mix-up didn't stop at painting and tattoo. Guess where else it spread? The kabuki stage. There was a famous actor who played with outlaw characters, and his whole costume was a leopard part. That leopard pattern saw this wild, rough outlaw look, exactly as it was. Paintings, tattoos, fiery costumes, one mix-up ran straight or out of pop culture. So here's what you're probably wondering now. Surely, it's different today, right? tattoo artists obviously know what real tiger look like now. You're right. Horishi today know exactly what real tiger look like. Documentary, photos, all of it. They know all about the round pupils, and yet in traditional wobbly style, they still often keep those split pupils. That exaggerated pattern on purpose. Why? It's not ignorance anymore. It's actually the opposite. That mistake has spent centuries turning into the tradition itself. I love spirit. They know it's wrong and they keep it anyway because that's exactly what makes it looks like wobbly. The error became aesthetic. Isn't that wild? So here's another thing. You're probably wondering, what about Korea? Korea actually had real tigers. That's right, the Korean peninsula had both the Baekdu mountain tiger, the Amur leopard, living there for real. Though the leopard basically vanished from the peninsula now. But here's the funny part. Even with both animals actually living there, Korean folk painting show that exact same mix of stripe and spots. Korea shared the exact same East Asia misconception Japan did. And this didn't just fossilize in paintings, it's fossilized in the language too. What's the Korean word for leopard? 표범. It literally means spotted tiger. A whole worldview treating the leopard as a variant of tiger, preserved word for word in the language itself. But here's one more thing that's genuinely fascinating. Where did the whole leopard equal female tiger idea even start? It was probably Korea. The Korean records aren't vague about this. It's very specific. People long lumped tiger and leopard together under the word. And in folk belief, some flat out considered the leopard a female tiger. There's even a saying that survived until recently, that the tiger and the leopard are, quote, husband and wife. China, though, is different. The characters for tiger and leopard have been separate words for a very long time. So, at least on paper and scholarly terms, China clearly distinguished the two. And here's the clincher. The very first tiger reference in Japanese literature is set on the Korean peninsula. In Japan's oldest history book, the earliest tiger story is about a Japanese envoy defeating a tiger in Baekje, the very route by which Japanese people first learned tigers existed. It ran straight through Korea. So China called them by separate name. Korea had this exact misconception, and Japan got its tiger knowledge through Korea, period. So if you trace why Japan called the leopard a female tiger, you'll land right back in Korea. Okay, let's circle back to the piece I opened with, Sato Masakyo, hunting a tiger. So who's Sato Masakyo? He wasn't a real person. Back then, the Edo shogunate had a band depicting certain warlords in ukiyo-e. So artists would just swap the names, and Sato Masakyo is a cover name for Kato Kiyomasa. And this Kato Kiyomasa was a real general who fought in Korea during Imjin War. And there's an actual record that he hunted a tiger there. A real hunt, not made up. And here's why that matters. Everything we've looked at so far was imagination or a mix-up. This is different. This is almost the only strong with actual, real contact with the animal. Not imagination, not painted off an important part. This one starts from a real eyewitness account. But look closely at the tiger in this painting. It's got two tails. Why? According to the legend of the time, an animal that lived long enough would grow a split tails and gain mystical power. So a real sighting traveled all the way from Korea to Ado through generations of painters who's never set foot in Korea. And it ended up turning back into a myth, a magic two-tailed tiger. And this is a thing I really wanted to say in this whole episode. It became myth become there was no real tiger. Okay, sure, that part makes sense. But even when the real thing was right there, it turned back into myth anyway. Which means what Irajmi loved, what we actually loved was never the animal. It was always the story. Kind of like my own.
Like, subscribe.
お疲れ様でした。